This is an experiment to see if I still remember how to make videos. Hi, this is Sonia from An Enthusiastic Reader. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to this video. This is a Friday Reads where I'm going to discuss things I've recently read, what I'm reading now, and some books I would really like to get to by the end of 2022. It's a very ambitious list. I doubt if I can do it, but I just wanted to throw out some books that I'm really interested in case any of them might appeal to you. So let's get started. I'm going to start with what I'm currently reading. I'm not very far into any of these books, so I don't have a lot to say about them. But the first one is Night of the Living Rez by Morgan Talty. And this is a Native American writer who's writing about, it's a book of connected short stories. And the stories vacillate in time between when the main character in every story was young or when he was a young adult. So when he was a young boy, we get to see some of the major incidents in his life that then affect him later. And the writing is very tense, gritty, very realistic, hyper-realistic, but also grounded in emotion. And I'm just trying to read one story a day so that they don't get mixed up in my mind and I get to see what the author was intending as he paces these stories out in the particular order he chose. And it's fantastic so far, and I recommend it. I'm also reading nonfiction, which is called Square Haunting, 5 Women Writers in London Between the Wars by Francesca Wade. A lot of booktubers that I really admire read this a couple of years ago when it came out, and it's always been on my list, and I thought this would be a really good time to pick it up because I've been reading a lot of war fiction this year. So this is about 5 authors that were women that were known for feminism, suffrage, independence, and breaking away from the traditional structures of family in their writing and also in their lives. And so this neighborhood in Bloomsbury neighborhood is well known for like cultivating artists. It's very bohemian. And then it talks about how the wars, World War I and II, affected this neighborhood and affected actually the lives of these women writers. I'm not very far into it. I think just 15%, but I'm really enjoying the profiles of these writers and people I had not heard of also. So I will say more about that when I get finished, but it's really good. Just like all the people I admire and trust said it was. I picked up a really short memoir called 4 Seasons in Rome on twins, insomnia, and the biggest funeral in the world by Anthony Doerr. Anthony Doerr wrote Cloud Cuckoo Land and The Shell Collectors and All the Light We Cannot See. And this is an account of his life when he and his wife, with brand new twin sons, moved to Rome. They've never been to Rome, but they go there because he received a fellowship. And so he's going there to write, I think, his 3rd novel. And it's kind of funny, kind of sweet, and disorienting for them to go to Rome. They live very close to the Vatican and all this artwork and this entirely different way of life. And while they are trying to get used to being parents for the first time, it's kind of a nice go to bed book because there isn't anything too heavy. There's nothing that's going to give you nightmares. It's just a funny and kind of delightful account of this particular time in his life. Here are some books I recently read. I mean, it's been almost 2 months since I made a video. I have DNF'd many books between then and now, and I'm not going to talk about those, but I was able to finish some books, and one of them was extremely long, so I feel like I still was getting a good reading experience despite all of my failures with several books that I just couldn't deal with. And the first one I just finished is Comedy Drama by Bob Odenkirk. He is an actor. You may know him from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And most of this very short memoir is about his kind of coming up through the comedy scene and sketch comedy scene. He didn't take it particularly seriously, it felt like at times, but maybe that's part of the comedy world. I am not really that much of a fan of like absurdist sketch comedy, so reading some of the accounts of the sketches that they made when they made Mr. Show and some other things that they did as live comedy, to me, were kind of excruciating to read about because I don't care about that kind of cringe comedy, but I really loved him so much in his dramatic roles. And so I just wanted to read a little bit about him. Unfortunately, this book doesn't go up to the current day. It kind of stops when they are in the middle of filming the final season of Better Call Saul. So I felt like that got a short shrift, and all in all, a third of the book was the index, and so it wasn't completely substantial. It just didn't really work for me too well as a memoir, but yet I do like his persona, and so there were some advantages to having read the book. I mentioned that I read a really long book. I have it here. I also read it in the Kindle version. It is Fortunes of War, the Balkan Trilogy by Olivia Manning. This was written between 1960 and probably like 1963. It's 3 novels, but it reads, when you read them back to back to back, they read like one continuous novel, essentially. And I read this as part of a group read, which was very, very gratifying because all the people who were participating were so smart and had all these different perspectives, and many of these people live in Europe. So they were providing all this great historical background and pictures and links to websites. And so it was very gratifying to read it with other people who know a lot more about this than I do. But essentially what the trilogy is about is a couple that got married. They barely knew each other, I think just a few weeks, maybe 2 weeks or something. And they get married and they go to Romania so that the husband, Guy, can teach English. And so they are in Bucharest. Yeah, Bucharest. I get Bucharest and Budapest mixed up, but they are in Bucharest. And so there's a big expat community there. And these people, Harriet and Guy Pringle, don't know each other very well. And I think Harriet had a romantic notion about what she thought their marriage would be like. And unfortunately, it is just at the beginnings of World War II, about ready to break out. And so the government is not very stable. There is a king, but there is a lot of fascism and a lot of uprisings and a lot of alliances. So there is a political aspect to these novels and how the politics of the times affect all the people there. And then there are all the people that Harriet and Guy befriend and associate with while they are there. And there is the character development and description is amazing. And the writing in these novels is also amazing. There's a lot of nature, scene setting with nature kind of juxtaposed to politics, and the descriptions of the excesses of the society before the war, and, these just big, huge tables of food that don't get eaten, and how much abundance there is contrasted with what's going to happen to these people over the course of 1,000 pages when they have to flee and go to another country, and some of the people that they knew from one country go with them. And so you get to see all this character development, all the relationship ebbs and flows, and you get to see young people who are like Harriet is barely 20. And so she's still very young, very unsophisticated and self-righteous at times, and also very lonely, and finds out that marriage isn't all that it's cracked up to be or that she thought it would be. And so there's just so much to it. And if you're looking for something that you're really you feel like you're a part of this whole experience with them, this was great. And we're planning on there's another trilogy about these same characters, and we're planning on picking that up later, in January. So I'm really excited to be reading another set of novels with these great people. So highly successful. Read an anthology of O. Henry Prize-winning fiction from 2022 called Best Short Stories 2022, the O. Henry Prize winners, edited and chosen by Valeria Luiselli. And so this is a little bit different than some of the previous editions of this anthology that I've read before. There were quite a few COVID stories in this collection, some of which worked much better than others. So I felt like some of the COVID stories were not very strong, but some of them were. But the other feature of this particular anthology is that there are 10 translated short stories. So there are stories from Russia and Spain and Greece and Ireland, and they're just, and more. I'm not hitting all the highlights, but the translated fiction was really interesting, and some of the stories were just great. And some of the highlights of the stories, there's a story in there by Lorrie Moore, which was one of the COVID stories, and I thought it was pretty heartfelt and sad. And it was about a group of sisters, adult women, who are kind of saying their goodbyes to their father over FaceTime as he's in the hospital and they can't go visit him. So that was Lorrie Moore's take on, something that we might all have as a common touchstone culturally after COVID. There was a story called Horse Soup by Vladimir Sorokin, translated by Max Lawton. And it's set during the fall of the Russian Empire, or the Soviet Empire, I'm sorry. And this man gets out of a Soviet prison, and he's telling a group of young people about his experience in this prison of how they had to eat soup made out of horses every day for 7 years, and that's all they ate. There was, but that's not what the story is about. So, I mean, that just touches on his background. And he develops a fetish for watching this particular woman named Olga eat. And it turns into this physical encounter, and he ends up hiring her to eat in front of him. But it's a novella, so it's quite long, and it's this really great developed story about probably an allegory for the fall of the Soviet Empire and deprivation. Oh, here comes the cat. Clementine. Will I cut you out of this, or will you be able to stay in the show? I don't know. There's another story called An Unlucky Man by Samanta Schweblin, translated by Meagan McDowell, which is a story about a little girl who drinks a cup of bleach. It was a horrible medical emergency, and so the family rushes her to the hospital, and her sister gets separated from the family and has an unforgettable encounter with an adult man. And it was a pretty harrowing story, but really good, really interesting. And another story I really liked was Rainbows by Joseph O'Neill, who is an Irish writer. And this is the story of a woman who has a teenage daughter, and there is a boy from her class that keeps kind of stalking her or hanging around her. And the mother makes a complaint to the school, and it turns out that the boy is actually the son of their dry cleaner. And so there is a family feud. There is a lot of remembrance of an event with her mentor that she remembers when she was in the university, and so there's a lot of the past coming up to the present. It was a really complicated and complex story that I thought was very good. So those are books I've recently read and that were successes for me. And let's talk a little bit about my wish list for the rest of 2022. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get to these, but I'd like to read the first John Fosse. Is it John Fosse or John Fosse novel, The Other Name? The first of, isn't it 6 novels? And it's the first 2 of those. Is it translated from the Norwegian? Wish I should have done my research. I want to read the new Kate Atkinson novel, Shrines of Gaiety. I don't really know anything about it, and I've seen kind of some mixed reactions to it, but I'm still all in. I love Kate Atkinson. I want to read a book called Corinne by Rebecca Morrow, which is a pseudonym for a best-selling New York Times author. And there's a lot of speculation online about who Rebecca Morrow really is. But I did hear a rumor that the person is Curtis Sittenfeld. And Curtis Sittenfeld, I will read anything by her. She's one of my favorite novelists, very greatly ignored on BookTube, but I really love her novels. And so if she's the author of this book, Corinne, I am all in. So I think I'll read it. Why not? I'd like to read the novella Foster by Claire Keegan. She is the woman who wrote Small Things Like These last year, which was a novella that has gotten a lot of attention and is about the 1980s in Ireland, when a man who's kind of an outsider in the town a bit because of his upbringing and has 5 daughters and a wife, has to make a big moral choice. I thought it was really good. I have heard a lot of people, there was some, justified criticism of it, but I really loved it. And so I'm anxious to read more Claire Keegan. There's a novel coming out on Tuesday called Flights by Lynn Steger Strong. She wrote a book a couple of years ago that I thought was just fantastic. So I'm eager to read more of her work. Again, I don't know that much about these books, but I want to read them on the basis of who wrote them. I definitely want to get to Desert Star, which is number 5 in the Renee Ballard mystery series. And that's coming out this week as well by Michael Connolly. I'm all in on this police procedural series. I like the main character, Renee. And finally, I want to read Trespasses by Louise Kennedy, which is a novel by an Irish writer. And it's kind of, I'm not sure if it's based completely upon herself, but I think it's autobiographical Troubles novel. So it's set in the 1980s. And I really think she's an interesting person. I've seen her tweeting on Twitter. Of course, I don't know what's going to happen to Twitter. I have a feeling we will not be there much longer. So pretty sad about that. So I've left some contact information in the show notes about my Instagram and my Goodreads and where you can email me if you'd like to. And of course, there's always BookTube. So it's funny how we connect with different people via different social media modules, isn't it? But Twitter is kind of unique in that you can follow so many people and really not have interactions with them necessarily, but feel like you're a part of something in your own little world of Twitter and your own little pods. And I think a lot of people are going to lose a lot of connections to those types of relationships. Parasocial, they may be, but you still feel a part of something. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but all I know is I've read some good books and I have some books on my list and looking forward to family coming home for Thanksgiving. We got the opportunity to go to New York. Well, mostly New York, New Jersey in September. And then I went to see my other family in Chicago. So I got a bad cold in between, wasn't COVID. And also, we've been doing a lot of work at our house. We've been having a lot of things done and just kind of refreshing paint and, trying to just feel better for the new year. So that's taken up a lot of our time. And I'm looking forward to just having family around at Thanksgiving. So I have some ideas for videos for December, and I hope that I can get to them. And thank you so much for watching. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.